Hello, thank you for joining me for another Dear Sam Help Horsemanship Series. This week, what I wanted to discuss was a theme that came up with a variety of owners and in some of my remote consultations with people all over the world with a variety of backgrounds, and yet it was a common theme. And, sometimes we don't recognize, or we've been taught not to recognize things that are happening with our horse because our standard has been, we'll say, lowered, or we've never had a standard or understanding that the chaos, the excessive movement, the pushiness, the constant busyness in horses is not their natural state of being. And, sometimes if we are surrounded by horses that are living in a constantly mentally distracted, anticipative, highly emotional state physically, all the horses around look like they're offering this movement. And so when we see it in our own horse, we're not thinking that there's really particularly a problem because our horse looks like everybody else's horse. But what I find happens is there's a huge difference between the either experienced or more capable, we'll say, rider who winds up being able to approach these mentally busy, perhaps insecure, perhaps fearful, perhaps tolerant horses in a physically containing manner, whether it's on the ground or in the saddle, and whether it's through equipment or riding practices. They're able to basically make the horse, we'll say, keep it together, meaning offer relatively safe behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that the horse is particularly building his confidence or mentally available to search and try. But what it does mean is that he's not physically explosive. And again, if this is the only example we see of what it looks like to ride horses, then when we see these contained, physically tight horses surrounding us, we don't know that there can be anything else different. And then the person who doesn't maybe have the same riding capabilities or the mentality of trying to approach interacting with the horse in a make the horse comply manner, and it feels like all of a sudden the horses will say acting bad or acting resistant, or all these different critical judgments that we put towards the horse, rather than recognizing that the chaotic behavior, the rushing behavior, the strong leaning on the bit and feeling like they're dragging you wherever, or leaning on the lead rope and feeling like they're dragging you around. All of that was in there the whole time. It wasn't that the horse didn't carry that with the stronger rider or maybe stronger personality or more ego based, I'm going to make that horse listen and learn a lesson type of approach. It was in there the whole time. It was just a matter of, we'll say, a battle of the wills. And in that moment, the person was able to, we'll say, contain the horse. But the problem is, this isn't setting the horse up for success. So we'll say a trainer, a professional, whomever can be riding a horse multiple times on multiple occasions. And if they are continuously bringing this containing type of approach towards the horse, they're basically teaching the horse to continue to be defensive towards humans. And anytime that horse is interacted with someone who has a lesser skill set or lesser maybe physical strength or physical ability in the saddle, or not that mentality in how they interact with the horse, everything comes exploding out that has been contained inside of that horse. And when it does, it can create fear, it can create trauma, it can create actual accidents where either the horse or the human might get hurt. And it starts the beginning of a pattern of unwanted interactions between the horse and the human. And then often what happens is the more experienced person will try and step in to teach the horse a lesson, to teach the horse to comply, to teach the horse to behave. And all they're doing is reinforcing what they were presenting to the horse before, creating more defensiveness, more fear, more concern. So it doesn't really matter how many times they try and either tune up or fix the horse, because all they're looking at is, are they physically complying in the behavior, or is it not looking that scary or dangerous? Versus stepping back and saying, The behavior is a result of the horse's mental and emotional state. And if every time we interact with this horse, he becomes more anticipative, more distracted, tighter and choppier in his steps, less balanced, if it seems like it takes more aids or stronger equipment as the, we'll say, training continues, then perhaps it's not working. Perhaps we need to take a step back and say, what is really happening? And let's peel back the layers. And I bring this up because it's a very difficult topic, because when you are somebody's student, you are going to them as a teacher and you are trusting their advice and you are believing what they are telling you about whatever it is that's happening with the horse. And unfortunately, because it is a much easier and more convenient practice to solely focus on the horse's movement rather than acknowledging what the horse's experience in his interaction with people, or believing his feedback, or even considering his feedback about whatever unnatural scenarios he's put into, he's just sort of bullied through things. And so, as the lesser, we'll say, confident, capable, whatever you want to call it, person starts to handle that horse, they can quickly become overwhelmed and it can be a fearful experience. And when they go to ask for help, it can kind of become this frustration, because I find in these scenarios, many trainers with good intentions, not trying to be mean, but they basically bully the human student just as they would the horse, meaning, come on, you just have to practice more. You just have to add more leg. Don't let him get away with that. Make him listen. None of those teaching, we'll say, approaches maybe help the human either one, understand why and how and where it's all starting to fall apart with their horse. Two, it does not build the human's confidence, so that as they are interacting with the horse, they're already starting off carrying concern, emotion, frustration, fear, and the horse is feeding off of that before they've even done anything. And three, it's reinforcing to the horse that this human experience is going to be yet another overwhelming, perhaps fearful situation. So this is one of those things where, again, I bring these things up because, again, just as like with many of these extreme horse scenarios, I'm the last stop with a lot of people where they have basically learned to have fear around horses, or in the learning process of having more experience with the horse, because of the unintentional making, forcing, pushing, bullying of the equine professional who has pushed the human beyond their threshold, who has not taught the human the skills to acknowledge and read and understand equine behavior, who has not taught the human how to have tools to be able to break down scenarios and think through them in real time and communicate effectively. So if you're feeling that you are overwhelmed with your horse, and whoever you're turning to for help is adding more stress to whatever you're currently experiencing, perhaps it's time to take a step back and maybe look to possibly other sources for help. Learning with horses, if you are overwhelmed, you are not going to help your horse. If you are frustrated or stressed or intimidated by your instructor, you are not going to help your horse. If you are feeling this sense of guilt or being bullied into doing things that you don't really want to do by your instructor, again, with good intention, but that's what you're coming away with, you are not helping your horse. And the best thing you can do to help your horse is first get clear on what it is that you're doing, on what it is or why you are asking things of your horse, of how you're asking things of your horse, of understanding the equine behavior. And then you can start to have a two-way conversation that makes sense to both you and your horse. Thank you for joining me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll see you next time.